up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the CP Podcast. I'm your host, CP. This is the podcast we're talking about the shit CP want to talk about. I'm actually tired of doing it. I'm tired of doing that. I don't want to do that anymore. Like, CP. Like, it's weird. I feel like I'm fucking doing a spell on myself because I always leave here so fucking exhausted. I'm not doing it anymore. You know what it is. It's CP Podcast where we talk about shit we want to talk about and not the bullshit. We ask questions and we don't necessarily want the answers, right? Sometimes the questions could spark the next mind to have the answer. I think as people, we want to rush to the answer so fast, but it's no fun in that.
Mm.
To my right, my warrior in the fight. And she's just, watching her go through her motherhood transition is just so dope. It's like life is crazy. Of course, Maya. Hey, Maya. And
What's
then,
up,
on screen, looking mean in all black, like he about to slide on the ops. Give it up for Amir, man.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this week, we want to get right into it because we've been already talking in here, and we keep saying like, okay, let's stop so we can do that on the podcast. Let's stop because it's like, man, it's some dope stuff. I came across this video earlier, and usually I'll wait for Maya to send me stuff that she wants to talk about on the podcast or just surprise me when we get here because I like for my reactions to be normal, right? And just, like nothing premeditated. But my dad sent me this video. Two of my friends sent me this video. And then I ended up sending it to Maya. But the page that posted it was private, and then they wouldn't let her in, which is kind of like, why y'all don't want to let Maya in? She asked to be in the page like 6-7 days ago, but they didn't want to let her in, which is crazy. But we ended up finding the video online, and what it is it was this old guy. He looked like one of my aunt's boyfriends. That's just the kind of nigga she be dating. He always come up with a Blockbuster tape, you know what I'm saying, and like a party sub. He just looked like a party sub type of nigga. But he did this speech about how the 80s babies are these like warrior babies that are here to change and save the world. And so, of course, me being an 80s baby, I would love for that to be true. But then also it's like I started thinking about what my generation has given to this world and how fast, because 30, 40 years is not a long time to make some of the jumps and leaps that we've made in technology, and I don't even want to say the 40 years since it's been the 80s, but really like, I'll say the 20 years since we've been in society enough to be able to shift it since we've been adults, young adults to where we are now, like the ability to shift our environment around us. We've done such an excellent job. These millennials, these baby boomer babies. And so you have to just wonder, like, what is this guy talking about? Now, before we watch it, Maya, you said something about millennials that was deep too. You said that you read 2 books.
Oh, so the fourth turning, the principle of the fourth turning is, we kind of talked about, I think, a few weeks ago, that weak men create hard times and hard men create good times, so they create weak men. And so that's how the generations go. There's 4 generations. I did a whole video on this, so I'll try to sum it up in like just a few minutes. There's 4 generations. And so the millennials would be the hero generation because they would have grown up in the hard times that their parents created. The parents are kind of like spiritual and like everything's cool. But they think everything's cool and we can be spiritual because they had such an easy upbringing with so much money that they can go ahead and just destroy what their parents had made. So before us, the last hero generation, if you buy this myth, would have been the GI generation, the greatest generation. And so they won World War II. They grew up in the Great Depression. So that's the hard times that created those great men that then made the 20th century America's century. They were so strong that was America's century.
Right.
And so their children were so spoiled that they've brought us to where we are. And now we see that our leaders are boomers, and people have a lot of terrible things to say about boomers. But we can see, looking around, that they've made the world we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's supposed to be our turn to make things right again because we have to put order to the chaos. And that's kind of a cyclical view of history.
Got you. I feel like a lot of the advancements in technology That's one thing, of course, right? But some of the findings, right? Like the way that we're viewing the world and how it needs to be researched and, questioned. Things that came before us, the generation that came before us was like, it's the Bible, that's it. We're kind of more like, nah, it doesn't make sense. I need like facts. I need artifacts. I need like a story because every generation has left a story. I think I like to what you just said makes it reminds me of like animals, right? Like ants and bees, right? Like you ever see like a huge ant hill? There had to be ants that had to build the hill.
Hmm.
But then those ants, they have larvae, they have kids. Those kids are born in the hill, especially if it's like in the middle of nowhere where the hill could just be thriving. And so there is going to be a difference between the ants that built the initial hill
Mm.
and then the ants that were born in a hill. Because what you would have to imagine is that the ants that built that hill probably weren't born in a hill this good.
No,
You understand what I'm saying?
they
And
had to work
so,
for it.
that kind of generational pass down, what you're passing them down is a result and not a process.
Yeah, and so they take it for granted.
Right.
And they think, well, we should destroy it. But it's like you have no idea the work it took to build this hill.
Exactly. Same with bees. Like they have built this big beehive. You ever like look on like National Geographic and like they're called animal control and they gotta tear it on a wall because bees have been in this thing for 6 years, abandoned place, and they just been building, building, building. Those last bees are not even the ones that really put in the work to really, build this beehive. So that being said, I want to watch this video and then I want to talk about whether or not these souls, us, what does it look like and what does it mean to choose the generation that you want to live in and why? So let's watch this.
Because any soul coming in since 1985, really I would say 1980, is an old soul. They are here to fight, but in a way that you don't even understand. They are here to reawaken you, to help get guidance, and they all must be centered. You cannot leave those souls alone. They did not come here to be left alone. If you leave them alone, they will come into the maturity of the animal body and they will fight and kill. They have done it before, they will do it again. If you guide them, they will not be abused by computers, they master computers. In fact, it kicks in their neuron centers faster. The sounds that you hear on the air in rap, the rap is only the soul that is very angry, and it needs to be angry because it needs that strength of, again, the, the gland of fight and flight. Can't think of the gland right now I'm talking about. It needs that kind of a quickening and awakening. But it also needs a time for peace and quiet. And you will find once they go through that, they suddenly fall asleep, and they sleep very deeply, because that is also to bring balance. But mark my word, none of these children are weak. These children are strong beyond belief, and they can take things that you could not take. That's why they chose this time of birth. They can be very good, they can be very bad, but they are not weak. They are strong. They were here for the final countdown.
Here for the final countdown. Now, he said that we will master computers. And if you think about what is going on with computers right now, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, from what he said, if looking back, we have the benefit of hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
So we know what we're facing as 80s babies. Amir's younger than us, but we know what we're facing as 80s babies. And it seems as though we're facing other 80s babies who's making AI that seek to replace us. So,
But isn't the idea of AI, wouldn't that kind of be an example of the mastery of the computer?
the mastery of the computer can be for good or bad.
Well, true, but I mean, like the computer itself can't be good or bad, but the mastery of it is to make it do whatever we need it to do. It becomes a necessity tool that we could, it's like that's the mastery of it. Like, I mean, think about it. Like when we were babies, the computers that they made from the 60s and 70s were just green screen, dot, dot, cursor, code type of stuff. And generations, we took, then they started making video games, and that would kind of open our brains a little bit to programming and what it could be. And then when we became of age, our imaginations were the ones that took everything into the next level. Like video games look real now. AI is, a game that has leaked over into real world with real ramifications.
See, I think if you take what he says on a metaphysical level, maybe that makes sense. However, I think that we're so good with computers just because we got them. So we're building on previous generations. We're building on previous generations. Like Bill Gates, what is he, a boomer?
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk, Gen Xer. And so we just happen to get this technology, and so we can use it as we please. What I'm really seeing right now with the AI is a very small group of technocratic elites who are developing this technology and leaving most of the rest of the world behind.
Okay, I will give you that, but I also think that we are the generation that can implement quote unquote their plan. Like if this guy knows quote unquote who we are, what our capabilities are, he's not the only one. People understand that this generation is the generation that is going to be able to usher in and take over and push forward. For example, my grandfather used to make his own toys. He used to play outside. I used to play outside because outside is never going to go away. Outside is always going to be a part of the world. But we have moved away from outside. But we always had other things.
Mm-hmm.
Like my Sega Genesis at the time was cutting edge when I was a kid. I didn't have to be outside because I had the Sega. The Sega was as good as it gets, right? Like you didn't need, I didn't need a PS5 to know that video games were dope because the ones that I played were dope for who I was at that time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's almost kind of like it's not just that we have access to it, it's that we have the ability to now play in it and manipulate it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. I see that most people, if we're going to take what he says at face value, are more getting lost in it. They're not able to manipulate it. They're letting it manipulate them. They're getting manipulated by technology. They're following the algorithm. They're not able to put the phone down and take control of their actions. So hopefully, and this is what I've been observing recently, I'm really hoping that later Gen Zs, so maybe not even Gen Z, whatever this next is coming after, is going to be able to pick up the pieces of what this technology has done to the American and the human psyche, because it's kind of destroyed a generation. Because they are depressed, they're suicidal, they're not. I mean, they're getting back into dating, but it's taken them a long time. Amir's the exception. We've all met Amir's girlfriend. She's very beautiful. He's able to get a girlfriend. I'm sure Amir will attest to the fact that
a lot of people Amir's age have girlfriends.
I'm 28, so it's
Right.
like
you're
that's
28,
kind of
so
normal.
you're a younger, you're an older Gen Z.
Yeah.
But there was a time when the internet hit that it really just messed these kids up. It was like a wrecking ball coming through these kids' minds.
But guess what, though? I think that relationships and dating and courtship and all of those things that were so important to a society that didn't have a lot of options. Like, I think people are getting smarter introspectively than they are getting socially. Like, cool has changed. I always reference the movie 21 Jump Street,
Mm-hmm.
the new one with Channing Tatum, and how they went undercover. Their plan was to fit in with these high school kids. And so what do? They go in there and they go there under the understanding that they knew that learning is lame. It's cool to not give a fuck. We laugh at the gay kids. We bully people who are different than us. And the kids are like, what the fuck is your problem?
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not our program.
Yeah.
That's you guys' program. That's not our program. And so I think that, there was a certain fascination with being hypersexual and being ready for families and marriage after high school. It just was like there were not a lot of options, and I think now people are realizing that it's like there's a lot more to me than trying to spruce myself up to get attention from the opposite sex. It's like,
Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
you don't think so?
Because of Instagram. I think Instagram has made it a lot worse for young girls. And I think like people have, like we're talking about a few weeks ago with the Kardashians and stuff, it's just they're not doing it in person. They're doing it over these weird avatars on their phone. So I think it's more of a mind fuck, pardon my language, than it was before.
Mm.
Which I mean that's not anybody's fault. That's technology's fault. Like technology hit, and it really just messed with our minds because our minds are still in I wouldn't even say 80s mode. We're like in 50s mode, turn 1900s mode, and this technology is like just going right through all that.
I think that it's more competition to be a girl now. I think that the idea that women, it's two things that I see. I feel like there's on one hand, women like to historically sink their teeth into a guy early to get that part of life out of the way. Cool, I got a man, found a man, locked him down, kids, whatever. And a lot of times, young men weren't reaching their full potential, especially as it pertains to them educating themselves and being a real suitor so that they can go out and see what they really wanted out of life. I think that a lot of our parents grew up and married somebody in a 5-mile radius of their house, and that was it. And so, you only saw 8 women who were single maybe a week based on whatever job you had, or and it was just like there was no real education about how big our world was, and maybe it was too big. Now that the world is a lot smaller, and I don't know, I think that for you to say that, I think that a lot of women who have class and who are traditional in a lot of ways feel that way about right now, because it's like, dog, these young girls is lost. And it's not, and they may be lost, but they're also they're like a direct, this is like a derivative of the competition that women never had to really display outside of putting on some lipstick, a nice dress, and going to a party or a ball and trying to be, the most beautiful woman in the room. That has changed.
Well, yeah, it was changed for men too, because men, you had to be one of the 10 that a young girl saw. But now she's got her phone and she's getting like thousands of suitors potentially
Well,
in
yeah,
the
but
area.
right, but I mean, she can't ask those men to marry her. Like,
I
there's nothing she
mean,
can do. Like, literally, she has to get chose. She can't just be like she can give herself physically to somebody, right? But then that takes her out of the category of what we're talking about, the traditionalists and the women who want to display themselves as what our parents thought was a lady, and that like a woman can have more sex easily, right? It's like, it really just jazzed up the hoe, because now like she's not hitting the track and out there. Like now she is showing herself online. Those suitors are the same guys that would drive past that street and see that girl in that dress and be like, how much for a date, etc. That same thing is happening. No different than when the 1-900 hotlines came out. And it was like, well, there were guys who never talked to a woman on the phone. Now they can be like, I can call this number. And, for those women, those have always been. There's always been porn. There's always been, strippers.
I would say it's not to nearly to the extent, and we don't have to talk about this the whole day.
No, I know.
But there is a crisis with teen girls. The suicide rates are on the rise, and mental health issues.
And you don't think that has anything to do with the fact that the traditional way, like women are having to, in a weird way, try harder than previous generations, and there's no one to teach our parents. My mom can't teach my daughters about how to live in this world and stay a lady and be it's different.
Oh no, I definitely think that has a lot to do with it. But I think that getting married or finding someone that actually loves you for you is important. And I think when girls see what's out there and what they have to do to stand out, it's a lot more Instagram, it's a lot more photos, it's a lot more how pretty are you, and then you're in competition with women from all over the world. Rather than you used to just be in competition with maybe your sisters and your cousins
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and the pool was a lot smaller, maybe just the girls in your school. And now the competition is from everybody. And the same with young boys. Like before, you're a pre-med, that was dope. You're a
Yeah.
5'11", you're a pre-med, this is a good catch. But now, well, pre-med doesn't make very much money. All the girls want 6 feet. So now you're not a good catch anymore. She can now have these options, and maybe it doesn't work out with the older guys, or maybe it does. But I just think it's such a mind fuck for these kids, and it's not their fault. It's technology's fault.
Right. Well, I think the idea that we're going through the rough part of it and that what comes out of it, because like I said, with the 21 Jump Street thing, there are things that we thought were such a big deal that really aren't a big deal, and we didn't learn that they weren't a big deal until we got older, that these kids know it's not a big deal now.
Yeah, they're better on a lot of things, like the emotional intelligence. They're better. I mean, I'll say they're too sensitive, because it does help to have lived in both worlds, the go outside and scrape up your knees world and the play on your computer world,
Right.
because then you at least have a little toughness, which the millennials have. And people got so crazy. They got crazy about 2020 would put things out. There would be all these shows talking about kidnapping, but when you look at where Gen Z grew up, they're actually some of the safest.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no reason for them to get so scared and be kept in the house like this. So I think it really does help that the millennials had a shot
Well,
to go
yeah,
outside and
the
play.
scare tactics drove technology sales up through the roof,
Hmm.
right? The scare tactics, it went hand in hand in computer sales and tablet sales and phone sales and console sales and you know STEM classes and things like that to teach the kids to feed the beast more, to make more machines, to make more ways to use the machine. That I agree with, and I can't, but I think that as it pertains to us picking this time, I've always felt like that was an interesting concept, that souls, we pick our parents. And I think that we never have the opportunity to talk about that because it doesn't coincide with the Bible. It doesn't coincide with things that social constructs that got put into place that we're supposed to know. It's just
Hmm.
like they drop shit like this on us and then expect us to decipher through what we've been taught, how to accept things that you know what I'm saying? Like, that's like a foreign concept. Like, what do you mean my soul chose this time because of how it's like, well, what?
Because
So
we had a task. Well, see, we're not taught about it in the Bible. If you took the Bible or you traditional Western teachings, you probably weren't taught about it.
right, because I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're taught that you live once, you do it right so that you can die and have eternal life somewhere else, never to return to be a smarter soul with more experience.
Yeah, that's Buddhist teachings.
See?
That's because so I didn't watch the video, so I had to do my own research,
Mhm.
because I was like, well, this is a topic.
They didn't want to
But
let her in.
yeah, so you go to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So this is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Can everybody see the Tibetan Book of the Dead? And this is the book of living and dying, and it's understanding the in between planes of when you die.
Right.
So it's not just you die. It's like you die, and then you have this journey, and your soul has to navigate something on the other side. So this book, and I'm not saying this is 100% true, but it is a very old book, and other cultures are familiar with what you're supposed to do in what they call the bardo. And the bardo is the in-between space where your soul goes between lifetimes. So this is the prayer for refuge from all terrors of the in-between. I'll just say this prayer is a general appeal to the various deities one might appeal to for refuge in the death transition. It does not follow closely the patterns of the visions in the realities between, but rather rehearses elements generally involved in the whole process, prepares the between being for the difficulties of the experience, and confirms the feeling of refuge extending on into future lives and in all situations. It should likewise be memorized by people preparing to guide their own death. So, the Dalai Lama's from Tibet. He has this long ancient tradition, and that this is what it kind of is. And it says here, part of this prayer to guide your soul to a favorable reincarnation. It says, may all beings, compatible types in the betweens, avoid all rivalry and find rebirth in high estates. When I am hungry and thirsty from intense addictions, may I not suffer real hunger, thirst, heat, and cold. May I behold the coupling of my next life's father and mother. May I see them as the Lord of compassion, father and mother themselves, free consciously to choose my birth. Then for the sake of others, may I obtain the best body adorned with the signs and marks. So that's how you ask, supposedly, as you're passing from this side, supposedly, how you ask on the next side for an incarnation that you will want.
A favorable one.
A favorable incarnation.
Now,
So-
here's the thing. As we discuss space and time, which are only things that are quote unquote constructs to our perception of this reality.
Yeah, it's this material reality.
Right.
On this plane.
On this plane.
Earth plane.
I always imagine myself being reincarnated as someone in the past, which is a crazy way to view it, because it's like, well, because this physical space, like what we can touch right now, you can rewind this timeline back theoretically and you'll see ancient Egypt, Mayans, the way that they explain it to us. Because based on what's been left in this space, quote unquote, from people who have passed away, you should be able to rewind this space and be back at that time. But just like they talk about how there were space wars before all of this even, stuff even happened, planets blew up, there were things going on that are high technological things that happened way back before us that, kind of like made us who we are now. Like this planet is just one of the planets. Like we could get reincarnated on a whole nother rock in a whole nother place because we can't bind this spiritual concept to Earth.
I mean, that's what they say. And there's no wrong way to say it because nobody knows.
Right.
There are people who come back from their near-death experiences and they say certain things.
Like what?
Well, they say how they chose their past lives. A lot of people say they saw their parents and they saw their parents fucking and were like, I want to be in there.
What?
That's what it says. That's what I just said.
It said it in a way where it didn't say they were fucking, but what?
When I behold the coupling of my next life's father and mother.
Oh, okay. I guess that's what it is. I'm thinking the coupling is like they going for ice cream and they walking hand in hand. It's like, I like you too. You a bad bitch. But you talking about like just some freaky ass little souls, like I want to be right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Wow. Stay out of my nuts, kids. Like, leave me alone. Let me bust my little nuts in my own little. I wish my kids would. I was like, man.
Maybe they did.
They probably did. Wow.
And if you, this guy called Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, Edgar Casey? Oh, so he was this guy. He was about turn of the century, about 100 years ago. And he was like a huge American prophet. And he would go into these states as he was falling asleep. So as he was drifting into unconsciousness, you ask him a question, and he had all these things. He was like a Nostradamus character. And so basically, he says that, yeah, we do choose our parents, and we know what we're going to be doing in this life. And we go there for a reason to help learn, which is very Buddhist.
And that I've always felt like, without knowing it was Buddhism or without understanding who said that, I've always felt that way. Like, I tell people, like, this life is like, imagine, like, remember how back in the day when virtual reality used to be in the middle of the mall? And you would kind of just line up and everybody would go there. It's your turn. You pay your little money. You put on the helmet and you could be standing on a thing and you shooting stuff. And then it's like you take the helmet off and you back in their world. that's kind of what I felt like this was. Like we have these helmets on and we're experiencing this thing, and then you take the helmet off when you die and you're back in the mall with all the souls, and you just continue on. And you know what I'm saying? It's like, because the idea that you pick your parents and your journey sounds great if you have a good life.
That's the trick. That's
You're
where
right.
it hinges. That you
But
gotta
if
have a
you're
good
like in
life.
prison, like I wouldn't have chose to come here to go to jail.
Well, you still have free will. And that also gets into, do humans have free will? Because if our whole life is mapped out before us, then do we have free will to choose things? I always believe we have free will. So you chose your parents and then you screwed up by going to prison. That's more of a Christian thing.
So then what about people whose parents abuse them?
That's where it comes in. There's this guy I follow, he's a psychologist and a YouTuber. He's called Daniel Mackler, and he says that people who believe this are they're rationalizing for their failure as parents, or they said, well, my kid chose to be born to me, so I can't do anything wrong. Or like I said before, letting yourself off the hook for the decisions you have made in your life, which isn't cool. Or kids who just need to excuse their parents and being like, well, it wasn't their fault. I chose to go through this abuse. And it's like, well, now it gets down to, do you have free will?
Right, but then it's like they say in the Bible, they be like, God knows everything that's going to happen.
But you get to choose.
So then how does he know what's going to happen if you get to choose? How do he
That's
know
one
what
of
you're
the
going to
things
choose?
why a lot of people don't believe in the Bible. Like, what are you talking about?
Right,
Like,
because it's like, well, he should have known what I was going to choose.
Yeah, but nevertheless, you still have the choice. In the Christian religion, you always have free will.
Right, but
you have to choose to sin.
But it's like a movie, more so, quote unquote, the way that they explain it, it's like a movie with a script more so than an improv sketch.
I mean, it's always improv because you can stop at any time, because that conscience is in your ear. Conscience is always in your ear.
But you stopping theoretically should be a part of the script.
Well, that's where we get into the many universes theory, that there is a universe in which you made this decision and a universe in which you made that other decision, so that they coexist at the same time. So every choice splinters off into a different universe.
So that's the multiverse idea, right?
Yeah, like the quantum universe, quantum jumping kind of thing. You can jump from in between.
But why do they call those universes instead of quantum timelines? Because
the universe would multiply. That's what they're saying, is it?
But that sounds crazy. Hold on. That sounds crazy because now, like, we found the fucking pillars of creation, which lets us know that it's so much creation out there. And so if every single world and every single person has a then this shit is just ridiculous.
We don't know if it's true, but also this gets back into, you cannot know the mind of God. So you keep living on this universe and you've made this choice, and maybe God knows that there are other universes in which you've made other choices, assuming God is real and assuming God knows all. Which we're not doing. We're just talking.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's part of the things that make you be like, I'm not saying I don't believe, but I don't blame somebody for not believing ever. Like, I would never look at an atheist and be like, dog, I think that, maybe they stopped asking questions. Maybe they asked too many questions and got down a path of too many I don't knows. It's like, well, then why the fuck am I coming here giving y'all my money?
Yeah, and then you get into like all these different churches and what they all have to say, and I totally get why people just leave it alone.
Yeah, because it's like, well, it becomes these different people's interpretations. Everybody is a weirdo. Some people in the Catholic Church is fucking kids, and they're, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, well, what the fuck is going on for real? Like, why are you not the ultimate person scared to go to hell?
A lot of these priests, not to be like this, a lot of them are secretly atheists. Gotcha. It's a job. But that goes for a lot of people too. They have this job.
You ever wonder that though? Like, dog, why are you sinning of all people when you know that you could go to hell? Like, I'm here because I don't know no better. So I'm sinning. I'm smoking weed on the way here. You know what I'm saying? Partying, trying to fuck strippers, whatever the fuck people do. It's like, because I don't know any better. And I'm coming here for you to tell me why I should know better. But then I come in here and fucking you're doing the most evil shit ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, who, like, why the fuck are you a slave master if you know that there's a hell?
I was reading this book about psychopaths, and the clergy attracts a lot of them. So they don't
Really?
have a moral compass. So I'm not saying most of the clergy. I'm not saying it's the majority of the clergy. I'm just saying that as far as where psychopaths end up in jobs, clergy is one of the big ones. Also media. So we could, we're more likely to be psychopaths than, a person who drives a bus.
Well, I mean, a psychopath in their mind is someone who wants to be a speaker of either the stat quo or lack thereof,
They
right?
want power. They want power. They want to lord power over people, and they don't have feelings. That's the thing about psychopaths. They don't have feelings, like me or you would have feelings.
Mm.
So, what gives them the most power? Prestige, possession. You get finance. You get clergy. You get entertainment.
Yeah, like Eric D. I feel you. And France. It's like, so you're telling me that they saying it's a universe for every decision everyone's ever made. Like, and then it's let's say it's 1 billion possibilities. And then there's 7 billion people on the planet. About 100 billion people have ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There are timelines where they have discovered time travel and did all this stuff because we can imagine it, so it could possibly happen, and then it could be, you know what I'm saying? Like,
That's the theory. There was this really interesting story. I'll see if I can pull it up. Of this guy who swore, and people lie all the time. So I'm just gonna throw this out. It's just a story, and he swore that he went in his car and he drove, and then he ended up in a different world. Let's see.
there are things. They found an ancient freeway the other day. Did you see that?
Oh, in the Central America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what? So they just so happen to find an ancient freeway in South America
That connected these different cities.
a bunch of ancient cities.
Let me see if I can pull that up. Ancient Maya cities superhighway revealed.
Like, so the Mayans, they just every day they got artwork showing stuff from the future. They have freeways or highways.
Did I? There we go. So 417 previously unknown cities linked. Because that's overgrown. So now that we can see with the drones, we're seeing a lot more. Dense jungles of
I'm
Guatemala.
just
and
imagine
southern
all the
Mexico.
people who did. I need my history grades changed because y'all didn't know what the fuck y'all was talking about. So how dare you fail me or give me a C? Just take the shit out to school till y'all know what the fuck it is.
You're never going to know about what it is.
But
Because
so
they
then-
never taught you about Mayans. They probably were just like, oh yeah, and then there were Mayans. They never
Right.
went into it.
But what they led us to believe is that none of this could have existed before us. And they keep trying to drive that home. The airplane was designed in 1950. The television was designed in 1950. It's like, it's just too much shit going on.
I will say that our iteration was what I was taught in school was a lot of American history, so they can teach from what we know. They
But
taught
that's-
American and
but that's
European
what I'm
history
saying,
and they
though.
can't teach this stuff.
They need to always preface it with, we're not sure, but...
Well, they are sure about American history.
No, they're not, though.
We're pretty sure about American history because we have that stuff written down. This
What
stuff
about what about all of the pyramids that they're finding that they thought were mountains, but now that they have these views, they're like, wait a minute, this thing is even on all sides, or some of these mountains that are actually big ass fucking tree stumps.
I will say when I meant to say not American history, U.S. history.
Oh,
So
okay,
stuff
yeah,
that's
history
applicable to us
right? Okay, yeah,
right
yeah.
now.
Since we've designed all this policy and all this Western civilization type of.
Well, like what do we need to navigate our world? Because like this is interesting. I'm fascinated by this.
Hell yeah.
However, they could find a million superhighways. I'm like, yo, that doesn't affect my day to day. What affects my day to day is the past 200 years. Really? Now we're talking about it? The past like 50 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Real shit. I agree with that. But
did you?
I do think that this type of knowledge changes how we view ourselves. I think that as the new human race, we're a little bit what do you want to call it? Arrogant.
Here's the thing about us, and we should be less arrogant. And this gets back to what we were talking to earlier in the conversation. Is that if this is true, then that proves that civilization that we got so used to could fall at any point.
And we would have to start over in a way that, what are the odds that all of our architects survive?
Oh, you know who would survive? And they've gone through this before. It would be the hunter-gatherer tribes.
Yeah, exactly. Which would push us back into a caveman-esque existence, right? Especially the children of the children that have to go through that.
Yeah, and that's why I'm always so, when people are like, burn it to the ground, I'm like, you do not know what that means. We do not want to burn it to the ground.
Right.
Because in our lifetime, when we've seen it, not in our lifetime, what I'm talking about, in our history that we know about, like the written history that we can get back to over the past like 2,000 years, when they burned it to the ground, Rome fell. And when Rome fell, the quality of life went down for Western
Everybody,
Europe.
yeah.
For everybody's quality of life went really far down.
Right.
So that's really what I can look at and see as an example of what would happen if we did let it all go. Now, on the flip side to that, you could say that Rome had gotten very corrupt and people needed to get back to a simpler way of life that wasn't so degenerate, wasn't so overly sexual, wasn't so greedy. And so the Christians got what they wanted and they went back to a simpler time.
Can I tell you what I would do?
That's true.
If this shit was about to fall and I had the power to do so, my mind would shift to putting everything in stone.
Yeah?
And I'm going to tell you why. We say that all the time. Nothing's set in stone.
No, it's true.
We say that all the time, but what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is that it doesn't exist until it's set in stone. It's not solidified and it's not forever until it's set in stone. What's been set in stone? Stories of the past. If the older generation, let's say right now, all our shit fell.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here and we want to leave something for our kids because they're not going to even know what we did. They're not going to know how dope we were. They're not going to know that we had a podcast and we talked about shit and we were, because they're not going to have a way to watch this. They're not going to have a way to revisit our Instagram pages and all of that. Like that's not set in stone.
Mm.
That's soft. That's software. It's soft. It can go away. It can be done. I would set it in stone, which makes me think that the technological stories and the stuff that they saw that they put in stone was because, you saw what happened. Something happened where everything just grew over and it was done.
Was that depopulation when they encountered the conquistadors and the Western Europeans gave them disease and just wiped out their population? That shit could happen too.
Could be, but here's the issue though. None of us have a history past what we know our history. Like none of us, if that was true, then the technology that was on Earth that would have been in the hands of a power would have continued to grow, but it didn't. As a matter of fact, everything started back from kind of like a weak point.
Well, and here's the thing, and people get on about we should have less children, but there comes a point where you have so few children, there's not enough to continue the cities, there's not enough to maintain those roads, there's not enough to keep the jungle at bay, and when you're talking about what the conquistadors came and did, they knocked out like 90% of the population. So it's just not enough. Because you imagine right now, if 90% of the people went away, factories stop, roads stop getting repaired, all of this stuff, and we didn't have to get hit by an asteroid. It's just it's just how useful people are to us. Like we look at it around and we're like, oh, there's too many people. It's this and this. But the fact that there are all these people, everyone's going to their little life and their own little place in the beehive and doing their thing, and it helps us, and we don't realize how much it helps us.
Yeah, I can see that. The reason I say that is because there's so many things on these hieroglyphs that depict things that theoretically should not have existed back then, based on how American history has taught us that those things only existed for us.
The Mayan oh yeah, we went over it the other day.
Right, but I'm talking about even on some of the Egyptian stuff, not just the Mayans, but across the water. Even if it was water back then, it could have been Pangea. It could have been, you know what I'm saying? But the pyramids in Antarctica now that everybody's talking about that look exactly like the ones in Giza that they don't even want to acknowledge, because if they do, then it changes our history.
I mean, that's true. I just, like I said, like I'm big into history. I love history. However, if there was a civilization around 5,000 years ago, like, or yeah, 10,000 years ago, I don't see how it changes my day to day right now. Unless I can learn the lessons of how they brought themselves down, and to avoid bringing myself down that way.
But that's the thing, though. Who said that they brought themselves down? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, we're on our way to bringing ourselves down.
mm,
We're that's why I say that, because Rome collapsed itself, and we're on our way to doing the same thing. This is what, if you look at the screen right now, you see the pyramids.
these look incredible.
Yeah, this is a good one. Is that let me go. I don't want to be like this person, but because anytime you see something like on Instagram, I'm always like, yo, did you Photoshop that?
Right. I see what you're saying. Because some of these look a little bit too
This is National Geographic.
perfect.
Okay, so this is National Geographic. Whose Instagram is this? Is this even my Instagram? Okay. So Nat Geo, I trust them because, they have a reputation. They'll go and cross-check their things. I mean, so perhaps it's not just, it's the shape of the one at Giza, but the one at Giza, the limestones are built up. So it's actually kind of like a stepping thing.
Well, I mean, it's also in one of the hottest places on Earth, right? And you put this one, in an area where all this snow, who knows how tall these things really are, because, I mean, this is millions of years of ice.
I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying, like, everything with a grain of salt.
Right, of course.
Because the original,
but everything with a grain of salt, even including the things that we think we know, those things they need to be revisited with a grain of salt, based on new findings. Right? It's like, I just feel like there are a lot more questions about the world now that we have. These millennials have learned ways to use drones and computer and animation and seismic detectors, where they can kind of like pulse the ground and then get like these x-rays of what's underneath, to be able to they're finding like lakes deep down underwater, which means that
lakes.
Ground level used to be different.
So what I'm seeing here is that, assuming that this was before in a hot environment, that this is water runoff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it looks as though it's shaped like that because of the way the water forms, and not because, which can be natural, and not necessarily because it was shaped like that by an architect. Now we're not going to know for sure until this melts completely, and then we go and see. But how far does this go down, and what is this other one on the side here?
And over there. And if you look from the drone view, they have like a top view where you see 3 of them, similar to Giza. Scroll up. I thought I saw it up.
These are tents.
Right, I'm talking about up though. Like, it was like up. Yeah, right there to the right. I mean, to the left, where CBS News.
So not quite say geologists. Let's see. So this CBS thing is debunking it. But
of course it is, though. It's CBS. It's the, that's the machine.
This, yeah, I'm not saying just because they debunk it means it's not
Nah,
true.
I know you aren't, but I'm just saying, like, of course, your CBSs and Foxes would come out immediately, like they're, like, dude, you weren't even there when it was made.
Because he's saying they have only 2 edges and not the 4 that Egyptian pyramids would have. And then the Egyptian pyramids it used to be covered. They used to be covered completely, so they used to be white, and there used to be like a thing on the top.
Mm-hmm.
And now the way we see them, we see these horizontal, the what was underneath that.
Right.
So we see the stackings, whereas with these, let me see, we don't see the ridges, the horizontal ridges necessarily. Like that's not. Like the pyramids are almost perfect, like 90, 90, 90.
Right.
And that's not quite there. So it depends what angle you get it from. Now this one's better, but then we also see that this ridge keeps going off like this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as crisp as the Egyptian pyramids.
Yeah, but I mean, like erosion, snow. If there was a flood and then it froze, that would explain a lot of that tundra. You know what I'm saying? Like, if there was a shift, right, when Pangea, something hit, broke up all the continents, some floated up, some floated up. You know what I'm saying?
Pangea happened a long, long time ago. This would have been after Pangea. This definitely would have been after Pangea. Now, that being said, there have been a lot of things that we're discovering in our history that they can confirm. Like 12,000 years ago, there was a genetic bottleneck of humans because of volcano. So they said that the human race went down to like, they said a few thousand worldwide, and we, came back from that. So I'm not saying we know all of history, especially once you get to ancient history. It's like, well, where would this stuff come from? Where would these artifacts even be?
I just think that who signed the Declaration of Independence ain't got shit to do with what happened to the Mayans. Like, I would rather know what happened to the Mayans than who, with a white wig and some makeup, was saying niggas ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
see, I am all about what's going to help me right now. Like this stuff is interesting. This stuff is interesting, but when you get to like recent history, like, okay, what were the effects of the airplane? What were the effects of the car? The car got rid of all the horses. Now we're seeing how that might help us right now, because we're seeing what are the effects of AI going to be? Are humans going to be like horses and we're going to get rid of most of us? You know what I mean? Like this stuff is fascinating. I'm not saying this stuff isn't fascinating, but I'm also just like, what is going to be there for me and my kids?
AI could easily detect the next major pandemic disease, perpetuate it, put it out, and kill everybody. Based on the fact that all of our blood types, all of our predisposed conditions are all digital public knowledge to a certain degree, right? They know how many Americans are this blood type and have a predisposition to this type of environment. Like, it wouldn't be hard for them to just take motherfuckers out for real with the help of AI.
Yeah, and this is you're talking about ethnic bioweapon.
Yeah.
So yeah, they could go through all of our 23andMe evidence and figure out how we get rid of these people and target a certain gene and make a thing for a gene.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not sure if we are there yet, but we're on our way.
They're there.
We're definitely on our way.
I don't think that it's public, it's there. Like, they're doing shit that we have no idea about. I read a thing that said that there was a guy who was a whistleblower who said that he went into a bunker that was stories and stories and stories below the ground, where he was working side by side with people who claimed that they were the Nephilim, and they were huge. And they were working right alongside with, like scientists or whatever. They also somehow couldn't acknowledge Jesus or any kind of religion. You had to it was like all kind of weird, very interesting, because the Nephilim is in the Bible.
I mean, people do say the Bible was an attempt to pass down the stories to the next generation. Same with Bhagavad Gita and a lot of these other ancient books. I'm at this point, I'm like, so much has been added and so much has been subtracted that how do we know what is real and what is not?
Right.
Now, I do know that this is why you don't send your information to 23andMe. You can't be so curious that you send your genes to in a box somewhere. You don't know what they're doing with it.
Well, I mean, let's even keep it even more real. Who really needs 23andMe, right? I seem like more black people in America would need that more than anybody. Like, we're the only really ones who have lost contact with how, where we genetically come from based on proximity to Africa, and then the traditions that go along genetically with our tribe of people. Like, the American black is literally something that the world has never seen, because here you are, they're just mixing up a bunch of Africans and then
Yeah.
calling us one thing, and then we're over here intermingling because you see another black person and he look good, she look good, and y'all like cool, but y'all not even ever supposed to meet.
But that's okay. The intermingling, like all of Sicily is people intermingling, and then they create a new
Right, but those people in
tribe.
Sicily have their history. They know their grandparents knew their grandparents knew
But
their
no, what I'm
grandparents.
saying is that they came from everywhere and they came together on this island, and they weren't supposed to mingle or whatever, and they made a new tribe, and that's okay.
Right, but
African Americans are a new tribe.
that was their choice.
Yeah,
It
but
was their choice to
we are
make
where
that
we
tribe,
are.
though. Like, yeah, I feel like if given the opportunity, we probably wouldn't have came here to do that. And so I think that, like, African is different than just, in my opinion, the different kinds of white people that are out there. Not, what I'm saying, like, nothing to be, it's like, but if you look how big Africa is, and then you have like the Egyptians, similar to Asia, like try telling a Chinese person they're Korean.
Oh yeah, but that's true. They don't want to hear. They understand the tribal barriers, and in Africa, there's more fighting amongst the tribes. It's not like a racial thing. It's like a
Yeah.
tribal thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of genetic diversity in Africa too. All I'm saying is that if you're regular white or you're regular black in America, like there's nothing wrong with that. You're no worse than an African.
I never said there's anything wrong with it, but it's something that we have not dealt with the ramifications of what it, and maybe we have.
But what are the ramifications? It's like, it's okay. We're here. We're here and we're doing okay.
Right, but
why we worry about something like that?
because you look at across, we always get our answers from nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, Chihuahuas is mean as fuck. Pit bulls are usually pretty cool.
I don't know. The numbers don't say that, but
Well,
that's okay.
the numbers don't say that because it's a physically imposing dog that can be taught to have aggression to match that, right?
Yeah.
But imagine mixing a pit bull with a Chihuahua and making a super dangerous dog that is huge with little man complex.
I mean,
you know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is, like,
you get into eugenics. I don't like it. You're not supposed to go to eugenics.
Why
You're
not?
really not supposed to go to eugenics. Nazis.
See?
We don't go there. It was just
Right.
like,
But, like, what were they trying to do? And why were they trying to do it? And what was the, you know what I'm saying? Like,
they
and
were trying
maybe
to make a master race and they were wrong.
but maybe the eugenics actually happened with us by mistake.
Probably.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it would have if those slave houses were allowed to keep going. There were a couple, like what we would consider like major farms, and then there were a bunch of just people keeping one or two slaves. So like these breeding farms. They didn't go so long that it might have accounted for eugenics like the Nazis were trying to do, because let's say they cut off the slave trade from Africa, say around 1800, and then so it wasn't like if you had like 300 years of that, you may have been able to breed. And thank God they didn't, because that's awful.
I mean, they did it
That's
anyway
awful.
for us, right? They put the biggest and strongest with the biggest and strongest, and they did just that.
They did.
Not for quote unquote genetic superiority, right? But for
money,
right? To make workhorses.
Yeah, capitalists.
Right.
It's the same way they did with horses. The same way they did with livestock.
Yeah.
And it was evil for them to do that.
But to my point, no other race in America has undergone that. They didn't just stop and kill all of the different kind of Africans that they made. They set them free without telling
Yeah.
them what was going on. They didn't tell them who and where they got them from or anything like that. We all came up in America growing up. Our grandparents and grandparents had, and then it became regular. But it's like, dog, like Shaq. What the fuck is he?
You see these
From the Congo or some shit like that.
yeah,
They said Mike Tyson was from the Congo. My bad, go ahead.
maybe, but you see these big ass Scottish guys that just throw these trees and stuff.
Yeah.
And then just like these are the white people that came over here and they just mixed up.
Right.
They let go of their past and they like let it go in the ocean, and then they come here and then everyone's all mixed up. So like American whites are a mutt. I don't. Oh God, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say a mutt race because that sounds terrible.
You
Thing
say
to say.
American whites are a mutt race?
Yeah, American whites.
And
are
you
a
don't
mutt
think
race.
American blacks are?
Oh, everybody is.
Okay.
And I don't have a problem with that because I think a human is a human, and we're
Of
like
course.
by free will and our actions and our discipline.
But at the
That's
same
where I'm
time,
at.
that's like saying like you get a rescue dog and you don't just want a dog, but you're gonna ask, what is this?
We're better than dogs.
Okay, but as an example,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like dog, we made ligers. Ligers don't just happen in the wild.
Yeah, but ligers can't reproduce.
Right.
They can't go out and make more ligers.
That's true. They are sterile.
Which is and Americans or whatever we are, whatever mutt you come from, because unless you can trace back all 8 of your grandparents to the ship, everyone's a mutt. I think that's such an equalizing thing. You can choose to focus on yourself.
But if I feel you, but I think that the problem with the mutt thing, that concept is that we're dealing with foreigners and immigrants, and then we're dealing with slaves. Right? So like you're dealing with people who came over here, kept a record, kept their language, was able to assimilate, change their language if they wanted to.
Which
And
they
then
did. Yeah.
right, but then for slavery, it was like they couldn't stay together. They were sold, so the knowledge was gone, the traditions were gone, the religion was gone, and all that's left is trying to find someone who looks like you enough to be able to relate to, and your biggest common denominator is the fact that none of us know who the fuck we are.
And Jim Crow really did a number on that because it was like, okay, all black is the same. So all black is the same, whether or not you were a free person in the North from 1800 and your family was free in the North going on from 1800. You're the same as someone whose family was enslaved into the South until 1865.
That's racism. The Jim Crow thing is just like, that's their way of trying to put a race in a superior, it's like,
Yeah, it's totally evil. It was messed up, and they were just like, oh, all blacks are the same and all whites are the same, and it's like, that's like American culture. It just grinds you up and puts everybody into a mincemeat. Whereas, maybe there was filet mignon, maybe there was ribeye, maybe there was New York steak, but all it does is put you in a meat grinder and put you into the mincemeat. And so until Jim Crow ended, yeah, you're just hamburger. Doesn't matter if you were, chuck from the bottom or if you were, ribeye from the top. You're just in this hamburger. And so now, thank God Jim Crow is over, so that maybe we could at least all be one hamburger instead of black hamburger over here, white hamburger over there.
Right, but I feel like most of the white hamburgers know what their ingredients are. And I think that is always going to be the resentful truth as a black person, who, whether you can choose to be angry or not, that's, you could waste your time and your living experience to be upset about, not knowing who and what you are. And then you got stuff like 23andMe, who takes advantage of people's
insecurities
and their want and need to know those things, because we walk amongst people who do know those things. And it's not fair. It's like, oh, you're German? That's what's up. That's cool. Oh, you're from Spain? Oh, that's what's up. That's cool. Where are you from? Well, I'm from Africa. From where? I don't know. Because they stole us and they made us work. And then, I don't know who my great grandfather decided to fuck, because either he was told to or because this is who was in proximity, and we don't know where the fuck she was from. So now my great 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 grandmother, I have no idea what her origins was, and because of that, I don't know any type of mental illnesses that I'm predisposed to. I don't know what type of um digestive things. There could be foods that could awaken my psyche on a level that my people have been eating this food for generations and I don't even know it and I've never even tried it.
No, I agree with you there.
So
Now, if we go back to what this guy is saying, is we chose our
right.
bodies.
Why would we choose slavery?
Well, why would we choose slavery? Because we needed to advance the soul. So if we believe what he says, we even chose the bodies we're in right now, knowing that we don't know our past.
Right.
Because that's also cleansing. Because I have African friends, and she's just like, her people are currently at war with the people next to her. And like thinking about that, and even when you go to the wars in Europe going on right now between these like people, if we looked at them, we're like, oh, y'all look the same. I don't know why you're at war.
Mm-hmm.
We get a
But
chance to leave that behind.
every time I do something dope, sometimes I feel guilty for being intelligent and using that intelligence to push a country forward where my country, where I'm from, is probably dying and needing people who are thinkers like me and you to help them advance their thing. It's like, I don't know where to send money to. I don't know where to, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, these are the things that make people want to research 23andMe and go back to quote unquote where they're from. But then how do you even trust 23andMe?
See, here's where I'm fundamentally going to disagree with you, like always, is that I think this is our country.
Mm.
Uh, we speak English. We speak English. We have the same cultural things that we understand as far as food, clothing, and all this stuff. I think culture is transmitted through action. I don't put so much faith in DNA because I've researched how cultures rise and fall, but the people are still there over thousands of years. They're under this ruler, under that ruler, under this ruler, under that ruler. But the people, you know, so there's a difference between culture and genetics. Now, here's one thing. This
Hold
is
on, hold
one
on.
guy.
But to that point though, while you're looking for that, I do agree. This is our country, but I think that we're all entitled to a motherland and a clear explanation of origin. That's all.
I mean, that like I
That's like saying
said,
like this is your job, right? But it's like if you get fired, right?
yeah.
White people are telling us to go back to Africa. It's like, well, we never been to Africa, so you're just trying to say that to hurt our feelings because you know that even when we got there, we wouldn't even know where to go, right? And the idea of that being this diss or this expression of racism, all it does is be like, well, that doesn't make people feel comfortable in this country. This country doesn't want me to be a part of it. Like I wear my hair in braids and hang down and all that. I was just in Florida this past weekend. It was nice people down there, but there are people who just literally, I would speak to them and they would look straight through me and speak to the white person behind me. And it's like, man, I don't feel welcome all over this country. And the pockets that I do feel welcome are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because if they wanted me to feel like this was my country, then they would not put a hyphenated um adjective to describe what kind of American I am. I've never ever been to Africa, which I'm embarrassed to say because I do want to go. But at the same time, it's like, how am I an African American on my SATs and I've never been there? So it doesn't feel like it's my country. It feels like I am over somebody's house and I have to ask to go to the bathroom and ask for something to drink and ask when can we eat and act like that's the feeling. And you can get more and more and more money and more power, which is why a lot of people become power hungry because they're starving for respect.
Yeah, I understand that. A lot of people are very unhappy about being described as African American or Asian American. They come out and they say, we're a raceless society and I'm an American. And that's their right to do it. If you
Hmm.
want to say I'm not African American, I'm American, I'll support you 110%.
Well, yeah, I want to say I want to rep who is gonna rep me, right? Like I want to. That's like saying like, how would you feel if if you called Tony your husband, but then he called you his girlfriend.
He was calling me his wife before we got married.
But
so,
you see what I'm saying,
yeah,
though.
I know.
Okay, so
I'd be upset.
And that him calling you his wife before y'all got married, that's a sign of respect.
I was mad. I was like, I need to get
Right.
married.
Give me my
first.
ring first before you start putting my lock. And that I understand, but the reciprocal or the reverse of that is even more detrimental and hurtful to have a husband that does not want to acknowledge you as his wife.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And if anyone ever tells you to go back to Africa, you tell them to go back to the Caucasus.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of
go back to the Caucasus, but it's like, yeah, whatever. I'm an American.
Like I'm just as American as you.
Yeah,
and a lot of descendants.
But you're an African American.
A lot of the descendants of slaves actually got here long before the descendants of white people got here. So you can say I'm much more American than you. I can trace if you can trace your ancestry back to slavery, you are more American than most white people who are telling you that, and you should let them know immediately.
No, I don't. I would rather not hang my hat on slavery and give the people who are responsible for slavery a pat on the back for making me more American than I absolutely needed to be. It's like I could, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what I would have been. I probably would not have been born, honestly.
Probably would have been born.
So
yeah.
I will acknowledge that. If they were not for slavery, my descendants would have never met, right? And so my soul chose to come here instead of to go to. It was people. The same night my parents was fucking, somebody was fucking in Africa too.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say, because you mentioned that you didn't know who to give money to, and this is a guy I like to give money to. I'm on his Patreon, and I'll be honest, I don't watch his videos. I'm on his Patreon because I know he does good with his money, and he's a medical doctor in Africa. And I met him I was introduced to him through John Campbell. And basically, I know that if I give him $10 a month, then that $10 is going directly to help these people. So that, shout out Andrew with Wafwa Medical Videos. He's not a big channel, but if you're looking to get more bang for your buck and giving money, that's just all I wanted to say on that. But yeah, I don't actually watch his videos because they make me sad. But I'll give him money.
I mean, you know, what's more American than that? You know what I'm saying? That's why they show the commercials to us. They show the commercials to us like 10 cents a day could help, you know, and it's like, I guess, you know what I'm saying? And you know, man, it's just so fucked up, Maya. I don't even know where to begin to think. I don't know what to think. Like, I don't know, you know, like I look at them and they don't quite they're black and brown, but they don't look like me.
They don't look like you. American blacks have an admixture of a bunch of different tribes plus white people. We're a different tribe entirely, a different people entirely. And the longer we get away from Jim Crow, the more there's going to be a mixture of Hispanics, people intermarrying with Hispanics, people intermarrying with white people, with Asians. We might not know what an American in 500 years will look like. They could all look Puerto Rican. That could be where we're going to.
And I think that's what happened in Egypt too, and why they try to make the Egyptians have this whitewashed African style. If you notice, like, Egypt is in Africa, but all of a sudden, the Egyptians all look like Bruno Mars. And it's like, it's almost like it's giving white people something to rest their hat on. Like, well, the Egyptians, of course they were so advanced, but they also weren't as African as all those other motherfuckers. The Egyptians were like black mixed with Greek. And that's why and it's just like, bruh, bullshit. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I'm not sure what the hell is going on, but I'm not about to say yes, 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 yes to everything, because it's like, nah, I just want to know the answer. And if I never know the answer, that's fine, but I'm never not going to have the question because everybody else has been taught to shut the fuck up and not have the question. That's not my style. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's just certain things. You know, you watch Hercules, and I mean, no, I'm sorry, that's Greek mythology. I'm thinking about but like the cartoons of Hercules look just like the Egyptian cartoons, just like a shade tanner. If you look at what they was teaching us as kids, like the Egyptians and they cartoons look just like Hercules in them, just a shade You know, like Jonathan Taylor Thomas was the Lion King. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I'm not upset, but I can't allow myself to be sheepishly quiet about questions that I have, and neither should you guys, right? Like, it should always be the questions, never the fucking answers. The second that you got to answer it, I mean that you got another problem on your hand that you need to solve. Like, we're not really, we're hoping to spark the brain that answers the question, and it could be 20 years from now. Like just like they found in 417 cities, what else they gonna find? You know. Next time we talk, I want to talk about the flat Earth theory. I know that as ridiculous as it may sound, and the idea of the firmament and the ice wall, like we can debunk it, or maybe we can't.
I think we can.
I think we can. You know what I'm saying? But it's a lot of stuff they're talking about. How have you heard about there being a United States sized secret continent on this planet that you want, if you want to call it that their technology is so much more advanced because it never stopped. Like there's a place on this earth beyond the ice wall where their technology, like it's like a library of technology for the world, and it has never stopped. And so the flying saucers are coming from there, and they're doing tours.
I have not heard that theory. I do not believe that theory.
Okay.
No, I don't believe flat Earth at all. I mean, all the physics and our satellites and like, but I'm willing to listen to the theory. I'll listen to anything.
If somebody wanted you to not believe in flat Earth, they would, like the moon landings were fake.
I believe that before I believe the Earth is flat.
Right, but so
because gravity brings everything to the center, so that's how.
But where else have we seen different kinds of gravity? If the moon landing was fake?
Oh, we can calculate gravity. So gravity. A lot of what we know because the natural world lines up with our formulas, our physics formulas, et cetera, et cetera. So for the Earth to be flat, that means that gravity isn't pulling everything toward the center mass, like all the other planets around and all this stuff. We can talk about it next week.
I want to. I really want to.
Because yeah, I hear about it a lot and I research it a lot, but I research it as how ideas get spread and not necessarily giving too much weight to the ideas.
Right.
Because that's where I'm at.
All right, y'all. This has been another episode of the CP Podcast. I'm your host, CP. It's Maya. That's Amir. And we gone.